Welcome to today's episode of the Africa Can Journey. Today's guest is Khotso Moji, Head of Global Markets at Standard Lesotho Bank. Hi Khotso, how are you doing today?
No, I'm good, and you?
I'm well, thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm really just going to dive right into my questions. But firstly, I would like to give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit more about what it is that you do.
Well, okay. I head the Global Markets Division, which is pretty much its mandate is to worry about foreign currency and interest rate risk management on behalf of the bank. Mm-hmm. So we look predominantly at international transactions and, offshore kind of exposures.
Okay.
So that's home for me.
Okay. And how long have you been with the bank?
Yeah, I'm almost ashamed to say, but it's like 10 years. 10
Oh,
years.
That's a huge milestone.
Yeah, I'm on my 11th year now.
Okay, that's so you're the right person to talk to on this particular subject.
I'd say with regards to having interface with the space, I think I have engaged with it sufficiently.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, impressive. So, as you know, the channel is focused on the cannabis industry, specifically the African context. And, just to start on a general note, since 2017, that's when Lesotho started issuing licenses for commercial medicinal cannabis operations. Have you had engagement with companies operating in this space in Lesotho?
Well, naturally, as a bank, obviously, we have had clients here and there, and we have engaged with the space. And to be quite honest, we are optimistic about what the space could actually provide going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I just also want to get your opinion. Do you think that this industry has a large or a big potential to basically have a... Okay. I wanted to get your opinion on this. In your view, does this industry present an opportunity to really make a significant economic difference to our country?
Well, if you sit down and you really look at, let's say, overall impact, whether you want to talk about the FDI flows in order to set up proper operations in cannabis, that in itself is indicative of the sizes of investment that you require in order to actually really participate in the space. Over and above that, the reality is, if you think about the strategic positioning of cannabis overall as an alternative to, let's say, opioids, at the end of the day, these are critical kind of drugs that are required. So I think there's a lot of upside potential for Lesotho and I think Africa in general. And for the first time, I think we are actually at the forefront of being the gateway to Africa. So it's very pivotal how we actually embrace this particular point, how we really how we really participate in this particular space going forward would be indicative of what really could happen, not only for Lesotho but for the continent as a whole.
Absolutely, I completely agree. It's a very big opportunity to actually define what opportunities can be, pursued, as well as to make sure that it really, it's in tune with the context that we're in, right? Yeah. Because obviously, Lesotho has a long history with the plant. And it's just very interesting to see how we are transitioning into a more commercial and organized, systematic industry. So I look forward to see what the next couple of years hold for us.
Yeah.
And I know in our previous conversations, casually, we've spoken about the impact that the current status of the federal illegality of cannabis has on the global industry. Could you maybe chat a bit about that?
Yes, definitely. I think actually this is in my world, this is a very big point in the sense that I think we tend to look at local legislation and think about, what carve-outs have been made locally, but we often neglect to think about the international implications in the sense that I think everybody is aware that the most traded currency in the world is the dollar. And if, technically speaking, the US or the Fed will continue to own the dollar. So wherever you transact in dollars, at the end of the day, you have to live up to whatever the set criteria and rules that the Fed actually imposes. And what we've come to realize is that in a bid to participate in the space, we find that not a lot of thought is given to the downstream participation in terms of the funds flowing. So from where we sit, we say, okay, fine, great. As much as that's the case, I think it would be very important for people to really think about having alternate settlement options. In the sense that, for example, Canada right now is, at the forefront of this initiative overall. And you find that, transacting in CAD would most probably be a lot more friendly. At the same time, I would even argue that alternatively use the euro. Because as long as you have euro certification and you transact in euro, then technically you're not breaching any covenants with regards to international transactions using, let's say, any given currency, i.e. the dollar. So I think out of familiarity we run to the dollar, but in this case I think it would be to everybody's mutual benefit to really think about what that really means and how best to position themselves.
And the risks as well. And
the risks thereof. Because, at the end of the day, you have the likes of OFAC, I think we've had chats about it, where for as long as you're using the dollar, you're open to OFAC restrictions and, they can really hold your money for investigation for an indefinite amount of time until they give themselves comfort with regards to the proceeds. So it's those considerations that sometimes I feel as if we don't really delve into or take ownership of. And I think the reality is if we get it right, it becomes easier for those who follow to actually then, follow suit and actually make this entire drive or industry a success. Not only for Lesotho, but for Africa as a whole.
Without stepping on too many toes.
Too many
significant, important ones. Okay, so currently there have been a lot of discussions and developments in the US as well around cannabis legislation. More states have come on board in terms of, decriminalizing as well as allowing for more flexible legal frameworks, and there's also continued discussion around the federal legality of cannabis. So I'm curious, in your view, what impact do you think it would have on the global market once the United States of America federally legalizes cannabis?
So that would just open the market up totally. In the sense that, I think the biggest problem that you tend to see is that from a consumption perspective, the US as a country is a market which we tend to export to, right? And for as long as you transact with a US entity, you are going to get dollars.
Yes.
Now, for as long as on a federal level, you are not cleared to actually transact on cannabis proceeds. That means from a banking perspective, you are running the risk from a correspondent banking relationship perspective, in the sense that should you be viewed as a bank that deals with transactions that are not above board, it taints the perception of the entire group and the actual bank in itself. So you may find yourself being barred from a lot of other transactions by virtue of playing in a space that is not fully legalized or
it's in the gray.
To be, for as long as it's in the gray, it's tricky. So personally, stay away from it all.
Okay, until we get the nod from the federal government.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a very important caution that I think a lot of companies also need to take that into consideration, particularly because I think we're really approaching a point now where a lot of the ones that started off in 2017 and 2018 are basically at a position now where they can start to trade and export and import. So there's more activity now in terms of cross-border transactions and trade. So I think that really it does highlight that issue significantly.
Yeah.
And I hope that our viewers have taken heed to that caution.
Yeah.
And just to close off our interview, I just wanted to know from your point of view and from your experience in banking and in financial markets, what are your hopes and what do you hope to see happen in this cannabis industry? You could speak to Lesotho or the broader African market.
Yeah, I think for me, the real hope lies in the federal legalization thereof, because that is the biggest inhibitor. Mm-hmm. The merits of the argument, I think, are known, and I think the more the industry grows, I think the more people are aware. But the reality is, for as long as it's viewed as half in, half out, mm-hmm. it does pose a challenge, not from a local regulation perspective, but from an international compliance perspective. Mm-hmm. And once you could get it out of the gray and it becomes well demarcated in terms of how one can transact and participate in the space, mm-hmm. I actually do think that that's when you will really see the bulk of the growth really come into the space.
Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of timeline, just if you were to guess, when do you think we would see this happen?
In reality, I don't control the Fed. I don't control the Fed.
Safe answer.
I'd love to put my neck on the block, but to be quite honest, I don't control the Fed. And I think sometimes it's challenging. It's a bit tricky to really think about it. And
I guess it's maybe one of those situations that we will continue to monitor and watch closely, and then we'll probably review what that impact will be once it has actually happened.
But in terms of the here and now, if you really take advantage of the alternate markets that don't necessarily require you to transact in dollars, and I mean US dollars, I think if you were to diversify your funds flow from that perspective and look strategically at the currencies that would allow funds to flow on condition that you have the correct certification. That is where I see the immediate kind of industry win really sitting.
Which is the Canadian dollar and the euro.
And the euro for the most, because obviously there's other currencies, but we need majors. We need currencies that have enough volume in terms of tradability.
Okay.
Yeah. So that you always have enough liquidity to get in and out of whatever position you're in.
Okay.
Sorry, now I'm talking treasury jargon, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's very enlightening, and I think more people should. Okay, no, thanks, Mojo. I think your advice has definitely been very insightful, and I guess from a legal perspective, I do definitely appreciate the risks and the compliance requirements which you've highlighted, and I hope that our viewers have also gained from this discussion. And I will leave your contact details at the end of the video, if you don't mind, just so that if there are other people or clients or operators that are interested in following up, they have the means to do so.
All right, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Bye.
Sweet.